Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona to help you out with a Pick 5 strategy video for Keeneland on Saturday, April the 12th. David, I believe this is day 7 of the 8 straight days of racing that Keeneland had after the adjusted schedule from last week. And you and I don't chat a lot about the sequences before this video. I think your grid came in. I took a slight look at it. I thought this was one of the more challenging sequences, and you and I have a lot of races where we're different. It just seemed like a tough sequence, I think, to especially early on to really have a strong opinion.
Yeah, this is one of those sequences where you have to make some very hard decisions because there's just wide open race after wide open race, and it's hard to find horses that you really want to key in on. And when we do this exercise, we try to find those horses that are going to offer value or you think are very likely winners of the races. And those are kind of tough to come by. You've got to really think about different scenarios and where you want to extract the value from, because it's very easy to put a ticket together for this sequence and have it get bloated and maybe go expand beyond your budget. So I tried to make some hard decisions and keep races thin where I could, but I think we've got a lot to talk about because this is a difficult one to put together.
We always love to hear from you, so feel free to comment in the YouTube section below. Let us know, who are some of your keys, some of your uses, some of the horses you're going to be defending with. Do you agree with some of our takes on the particular races? If you want to follow along with us, we're going to be looking at races 7 and on. That's the start of the Pick 5 on Saturday at Keeneland, and races 9 and 10 are graded stakes races. We have the Lexington, and then we have the Grade 1 Jenny Wiley, both challenging, kind of tricky. I think maybe the Lexington and maybe race 11 in the sequence are probably where people will try to shorten up. I could see there being like a short price favorite at the very end. And then maybe in the Lexington, you kind of pick one of the couple shorter prices. But David, not an easy way to start here in race number 7 with this maiden special weight group going 6.5 furlongs on the main track. These are 3-year-olds. I mean, honestly, you could go through this entire field and make a legitimate case for most of these horses. Valiant Humor is going to take some money from the inside off the connections. Solid debut at the fairgrounds when your beaten favorite when finished 3rd that day. To the very outside, you have Modus Bestia, who was a really nice debut runner-up, then went a little longer and cuts back. Some horses in this race have gone longer and cut back, so they should probably be a little better going 6.5. I mean, just take your pick on prices. I think you can make cases for in here. Who are some of the horses on your radar?
Yeah, getting through this first leg feels like it could be a victory in and of itself
It
because this
does.
is arguably the toughest race of the sequence right off the bat. I guess I'd rather have this as the first leg of the sequence as
Yep.
opposed to the last leg, because at least if you're wrong here, you can make decisions about how to wager on the rest with regard to the last 4 races going forward. But this is one of those where I felt like I had to push myself to narrow things down a little bit, because handicapping this race, there was horse after horse that I could find some positive things
Yeah.
to say, and you just have to decide who you think is going to offer the best value. And for me, I wanted to downgrade some horses that I thought were going to take money. Those are actually the horses that are drawn closest to the inside and the outside in the starting gate. The one, Valiant Humor, for me, that's a quintessential defend horse. I don't think there's anything too clever about the horse. It ran fine on debut for a trader that can certainly have horses to fire in Brad Cox. I just thought the horse had the chance to win that day as the favorite at Fairgrounds. I don't really see improvement coming, so that's why I've got that horse in the defend category. I have the number 12 Modus Bestia rated a little bit higher. This horse did run well enough to win a race like this on debut, finishing 2nd to the highly regarded San Saba out in California, and he probably didn't want to go long last time. I still question this horse coming to Keeneland, whether he's going to bring his A game and get back to that debut race. So again, I didn't see a ton of value with that horse, so I ended up pushing myself towards a couple of horses in the middle of the starting gate that I thought could be fair prices. One of those is the number 8 Zandvoort, who honestly didn't show that much during his 2-year-old season, competed a couple of times in Kentucky over the summer for Steve Asmussen, showed speed, faded last time, closed a little bit on debut, got buyers in the mid-50s. That's not going to get it done here, but he's coming off the layoff now, adding blinkers, adding Lasix. I watched the most recent workout, which you can find a video of for the March 28th work at Keeneland from the gate, and that was a powerful drill. He was much the best. It looked like the kind of workout that suggests this horse might be a lot better now now than what he showed during his 2-year-old season, and he certainly has the pedigree to get better. So this is one that I think is going to perform a lot better than the form indicates in this spot. So that's why I've got him in the key category. And then there are plenty of first-time starters in this race that look like they could be live. The one that I feel the most confident trusting is the number 7 Big Truz. My other key horse in this race goes out for the excellent debut sire Justify. There is pedigree on the dam side. The dam is actually a half sister to that hard knocking dirt sprinter Salutos Amigos that was competing about a decade ago in stakes races in New York. Brian Lynch can certainly have one ready to fire on debut. Again, saw a couple workout videos for this horse. He looks like a big, powerful son of Justify that has plenty of speed to him. So I'm expecting a good effort from this one on debut, but there are plenty of other horses that we can talk about, Gino. It was hard for me to downgrade horses like the 2 Fact or the 9 Vex, also horses that I think have been working really well into this race, just not going out for barns that have as strong statistics with their debut runners.
David, of the DRFTV staff, you and I probably two of the more verbose. So I think producer Lucia is happy that this wasn't a race that we did a horse by horse preview, because you and I would have been here for about an hour talking about this entire field if we had to go horse by horse. Because yeah, I mean, I do my first over, look at the replays, and then kind of make marks on horses. And I'm like going through almost every horse, like giving them a shot, either thinking that their most recent races were races that were not necessarily relevant, or they would really enjoy cutting back to 6.5. A few horses that I want to mention that maybe we didn't. The 11, who's going to be a big price here. This is Sinister Smile. So this horse is going to go 3rd start of the form cycle and comes over from Turfway. I generally like looking at some of the horses that come from Turfway over to Keeneland, because I think sometimes they just don't, they get overlooked a little bit. Folks will kind of go right past them because they're coming off the synthetic races. In the last few years, that meet at Turfway has been so much better. Like the quality, the competition level, just been way, way stronger than in years prior. If you look at Sinister Smile's overall form, the career debut, the only time on the dirt, wasn't a bad effort, finished 3rd in that really strong maiden race behind Barnes and Innovator when Barnes went over to Churchill Downs and won that sprint. Following that, couple races on the synthetic, one of them going longer, couple months off now, 3rd start back. I think this horse cutting back could be kind of sitting nice from the outside, even hooked a little bit wide, wouldn't bother me as much because of the cutback and distance. Could just see this being a horse that people look right past and don't use in a wide open race. And I wanted to make sure was in the mix. Talked about the 12, Modus Bestia, the 10, you mentioned a little bit, Nantucket, who's actually a have to express train grade 1 winner. And I thought the horse could step forward off of that debut. The 1 and the 6, Valiant Humor, definitely in the mix for me, more of a use. You didn't mention Bourbon Flight, so I'll talk a little bit about this one, who debut race was behind Authentic's Strike, who is 2 for 3, came back to win by 10 next out at Keeneland with an 83 buyer speed figure. A 3rd place finisher in that debut race was actually Publisher, the Arkansas Derby runner-up. I think that was a pretty strong group. 4th in that race was Instant Replay, who was 3rd in the Louisiana Derby. So good group that he faces in the debut at Ellis. Comes back in his 1st start of the year, and he was in the race with Disruptor, where he was actually quick. Didn't really have a comfortable trip. He was in between horses. He was chasing within a length. Then he backed up and he couldn't really re-rally. Just got a little bit tired in the 1st start in like a 6.5 month break. That's why this race is challenging. You can make cases for a lot of horses just like that. The first time starters you were building cases for. I threw the 2 Fact in as a defend because I do think this horse is live. I get a little concerned sometimes with horses debuting at like 6.5. It's kind of a tricky debut distance where a lot of times I kind of prefer horses, if they fit, that have a little bit more experience and might have a little more bottom. So that's why I use the 2 defensively. And again, I would not talk you off of other first time starters like you threw in, David. Just not an easy way to kick this pick 5 off. So good luck just trying to stay alive, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and as you were going through some of the horses you like, I agree with what you're saying about the number 6 Bourbon Flight in particular. I kind of like this horse, and I completely left this horse off my grid because I just had to make some hard decisions. Maybe I would like to put this horse in the defend category somewhere because I could see this horse really improving second off the layoff, but it's just one of those races where you can make cases for so many, but you can't bet them all.
Let's move to race number 8. It'll be a mile and a 16th race on the turf course. These are 3-year-old fillies in a first level allowance here, David. Looking at Burning Pine as a horse who will take some money, but certainly not a horse who is a standout or a cinch in a race like this, because what we know of Burning Pine, a 3-year-old filly, she's raced twice, but her only win came going 4.5 furlongs on the dirt. This race is a mile and a 16th on the turf. So she's just a tough read off of that alone. She went to Royal Ascot in 2024 and she was dead last in a field of 16 and she was 40-1. So she didn't get a lot of money like sometimes the Wesley Ward runners will. She's a horse who is just going to be one of the, the prices and one of the horses to beat. I think to start with, I think Al Jafara might actually be the morning line favorite to the
Mhm.
outside, but the 5 will take some money here, David, too. I didn't necessarily think she had to win this race. She's just a tough horse with a lot of like knocks against what would be a short price, certainly ability, but I didn't even mention the long layoff too. Who are some of the horses on your radar that you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm actually glad that you brought up Burning Pine first because I think she is a horse that we're both against in here. And I guess she could take some money in this spot going out for the connections that she does. I mean, I think she'll probably go off higher than 7-2, but I don't want to criticize Nick's line too much.
Yeah.
These are impossible
Oh, I
races to make
know.
morning lines for. I certainly don't envy the task. But Burning Pine, Gino, not a horse that I like in this spot. You summarized her career well. I guess you have to decide for yourself whether or not you think that she really is a turf horse and maybe just that trip overseas did not agree with her. While she does have plenty of turf pedigree, I did not like the way she was moving over the turf course when I watched the replay of that Royal Ascot race. And I've watched also some workout videos of her coming back for this, and she is not working very well. I mean, Wesley Ward has paired her with some pretty nice horses in the morning, but she is decidedly second best to those and just looks like a horse that hasn't really grown up over the winter. If she wins this race, I'm not. Then I'm going to be out because I
Yeah,
don't like her at all in this
me
spot.
too.
Getting to some of the other short prices, which I am a little bit more positive on, and we could take a look at my grid for this race because I've got them both in the key category. Both European shippers, so I guess they're wild cards to some extent, but they are switching into very live barns. I'm talking about Bessie Abbott, the number 8, and Al Jafar, the number 11. The latter of which probably will go favored in this race, going out for Chad Brown and Flavian Pratt. I liked the replay of her last race in France. I'm not really sure what she was beating in that spot, but she did seem like a horse that wanted every bit of that distance. She's a big, robust chestnut filly who just kind of wore down her rivals that day. She's got actually plenty of stamina to go on in distance if they choose to do so. Her dam is a full sister to an Epsom Oaks winner, so there is a lot of breeding for her to appreciate extra ground. Probably not going to matter in this mile and a 16th race, but just feels like one that probably is going to give a good account of herself here. And as for the number 8, Bessie Abbott, you don't really think of Mark Casse as doing particularly well with these European shippers. He doesn't get too many of them. But Mark Casse, the barn has just been so live over the past year. I almost feel like you have to view him as a relatively new stable on the scene because you look up some of the stats, especially in DRF Formulator, and he's just doing so well in the past 12 months, even in categories that he hadn't been doing so well in the years prior.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have to respect anything he's sending out right now. And I was impressed by this Phillies replay when I watched her debut in Ireland. She broke last in the field, had to come up the inside, and she did save all the ground, but had to show some real tenacity to come through on the inside of horses and get the lead. And she maintained that advantage all the way to the wire. Feels like there's some quality there. Again, I don't really know what she was beating, but I don't think so highly of a lot of the horses that we've been accustomed to seeing competing in this country on the turf that are running in this race. So I felt comfortable enough going to these two shippers.
Yeah. David, we have a lot of similarities in the grid for me too. I do think the 11 is probably the horse to beat, Al Jafara, who I will have as one of my key horses as well. But there are a couple that are kind of interesting price horses that I want to mention a little bit. The 7 Dear Louise, I thought coming back now, making the second start off of the bench. I thought the form last year was pretty good, including a third here at Keeneland in a spot kind of like this, then was off from October to February, showed back up in February and was inside, was a couple lengths off, got steadied, shifted up the rail. Things got really tight late. I feel like the horse could have been closer. That was the October race back. And then most recently, the February race, this horse was 3 deep early on and wide all the way around. So I think you go through the form. You have 2 good races last year. The one that I had mentioned where the horse had a little bit of trouble at Keeneland. Then on February 28th, after the layoff, in a race that they needed, no doubt, were really, really wide in park. So I feel like this is a type of horse who gets dismissed. People just kind of look at the last running line and may go right past Dear Louise. So the 7 and the 9 were kind of my really fun price horses to use in here. Miss Linnell is another one who doesn't feel like a synthetic horse. But if you go back to last year and the form on the grass, I thought pretty solid, including that November race at Churchill Down when finishing third behind a horse named Sweet Treasure, who's a pretty talented runner. So those were two that are going to be big prices in here that I definitely want to make sure I'm using, because if either one of them wins, I want to make sure that I'm well covered in the other races. Behind them, I will use the two Always Forever in the U spot. I think got a really nice trip last time out. David, you didn't talk much about this one, but you can kind of comment after. I know you had this in the defend category as well. And then for me in the defend category, I had an interesting price, Poppy the Princess, another one who's been on synthetic recently, but you go back to the turf form last year, it's really not bad. It was in that November 7th race, chasing that lone speed winner, Sweet Treasure, that day. And then the other defend, the reason why I put Bessie Abbott in the defend, I think probably the combination of the long layoff, and it looks like she was getting started earlier in the year, and then I think may have had some time that was missed in January. So I want to use, because all the things that you mentioned visually was extremely impressive in that race in Ireland, in that debut race. And as you pointed out, Mark Cassie seemed like it started with the 2-year-olds, and then it's just been sustained ever since Saratoga. And you are right, like all over all of the, when you look at the DRF formulator stats, like everything is up overall, just really firing on all cylinders right now. So that's the way I've set things up. David, if there's anything else you wanted to mention, because I know there were a couple horses I think on the back end you probably didn't get to talk a whole lot about.
Yeah, I mean, I'll comment on the one horse that you brought up in the used category for you. Number two, Always Forever. I had her as a defend horse. She's going out for top connections. I'm not going to be surprised when she does well here. She's just gotten such good trips in her
Yep.
races. I wonder how much upside there really is for her anymore. And the one more horse that I'll highlight that I had in the used category, who I do think is going to be a big price in here, is the number 10, Eunomia, who is a first-time turfer. I just love the turf pedigree on this horse. The Tis the Laws have really taken to the grass. He's actually winning at 22% with his starters start running on the turf so far. And on the dam side, well, it doesn't look like there's a ton of turf pedigree immediately. The dam herself is a half sister to a horse named Karlovy Vary, who was actually grade 1 placed on synthetic, but also was a 3-time turf winner. So there's plenty of grass pedigree with this horse. And it's not like she has to improve that much on her Keeneland maiden win on the dirt from last year. So she's one that I definitely want to get in there. Trainer stats, not so good with this one, with making the surface switch. That's why I've got her down in the used category, but definitely a horse that's going to be a big price that I want somewhere in my tickets.
Yeah, what's nice about her too, David, she gets Lasix for the first time, and
Mhm.
she should be forwardly placed. I'm expecting Burning Pine to show speed because that works so well for the horse, and
Yeah.
that's probably what they want to do. But other than that, there's a lot of horses in this race that are back of the pack, mid pack type horses. If they get aggressive with Eunomia sitting maybe second or third, could just get one of those spots where you kind of fall into a really nice trip.
That's exactly what I was thinking. She's a horse that can be forward in this race, and I don't really trust too many of the other horses that are going to be attaining that forward position.
Yep, we could see a lot of horses in here getting stuck, some traffic,
Yep.
probably horses that you and I will want to bet back the next time they run after we watch their replays and they get in trouble. But we'll see how the race shapes out. That's race number 8 on Saturday over at Keeneland. We move to the graded stakes portion of the pick 5 here. We'll talk about the Lexington in race 9 and then the Jenny Wiley in race number 10. And this one, David, I believe Rolando ran the other day, right? So it's going to be coming
Yep.
out of this one. So that it's worth mentioning because he is a quick horse who would have been part of the pace stretching out in here from sprint races. So you can remove him from this field. I think Prater is going to take a lot of money, and Gosker would expect the two of them. They haven't been quite. Would obviously Prater with the win over Sovereignty last year. That just looks so much better now with Sovereignty being one of the top 3-year-olds in the division. Bullard is a horse who has been in stakes races. You and I talked about Bullard before. We weren't quite as high on him when he was in some of those sprints. Now he's going to stretch out. He didn't really have a whole lot of early speed at the sprints. We'll see if he's just more forward naturally stretching out in here. Who are some of the horses that you like in this group?
Yeah, I'll just also mention Touchy, another one that competed in that Lafayette on, I
Yeah,
think it was Monday, 5 days ago. So unlikely that either Rolando or Touchy is going to run this race. I haven't seen the reporting from that on that yet. I imagine our colleagues Marcus Hirsch and Nicole Russo will be covering this race.
yeah.
So check that out on DRF.com if you want that information. But likely this field is going to go with no more than 7 runners. As for those favorites, Gino, I'm just not convinced. And my take on this race generally is that there are horses that are going to take a lot of money in here that I just don't trust. And I would never really want to bet at the prices they're going to be. And kind of leading that list for me is the number 7 Preater. I know he's got the 90 buyer from his 2-year-old season. That was a day at Aqueduct where speed and the rail seemed to be an advantage. So I think the 90 buyer is somewhat inflated. And while he hit the wire with Sovereignty, Sovereignty was closing out in the middle of the track and had a much tougher trip than Preeter did. And I think that's a reason why people liked Sovereignty out of that race. And why we've subsequently seen Sovereignty do so well out of that race. Preeter returned last time with a facile victory at Gulfstream, but that was against terrible competition. I don't like this horse going longer. To me, he looks like more of a one-turn type. I just don't really want him in this race. I put him in the defend category just out of respect for connections, but I want to lean towards others. Gosker, a little bit tougher for me to eliminate because he does seem like a horse with talent, and he earned a speed figure last time that makes him competitive here. I just, I don't want to overemphasize performances at Gulfstream where horses just get to the front end or
Yeah.
to the lead and set moderate paces, and then there's no closing going on from the back of the pack. And that was kind of the type of race he was in. The other horse that was forward with him came back earlier this week at Keeneland and did disappoint. That was the runner-up Pitkin. So I've got some questions about him as well. And my take on this race is I just want to lean towards prices, and I can make
Yes.
some mild cases for a few of them. Touchy, I should say, Hypnus is going to be the most realistic of those that I'm trying to attain in the key category because he has shown talent along the way, and they just threw him to the wolves in the Rebel and the Louisiana Derby. He wasn't up to the challenge. I think the distance of the Louisiana Derby is simply too far for him. So I like him turning back here. Generally don't like these horses that tried the Derby preps and then go to the Lexington as kind of a last resort. So that's not a positive for me, but I do think Hypnus has talent. So he's the one of the shorter prices that I trust the most. But I want to make a bigger push to the two horses drawn down towards the inside, the two Bracket Buster and the one Hard as Life. Bracket Buster, just a horse that ran really well when they stretched him out last year as a 2-year-old. He won a race at Keeneland, breaking his maiden going this distance. And then last time in the Street Sense, when we saw him in October most recently, he got a tough trip in that race, shuffled back around the turn, and just look who beat him. Sovereignty, Tistastic, Sandman, all horses that are since in the Kentucky Derby, some of the better 3-year-olds that are out there. And I don't think Bracket Buster ran so much worse than those horses in the race, given the trip that he got. So I think he's very dangerous, especially given the pace scenario, where it seems like there isn't a ton of speed in this race. He's very sharp from the gate and should be forward. And then the number one, Hard as Life. I did a stakes preview of this race with Mike Beer, and I actually made this horse my top pick just because he's going to get so ignored on the tote board because he just really doesn't look that appealing on paper. He's slow. He's never run in the dirt before. I just like some of this horse's replays. I thought he was really gritty to come between horses when he won on the turf, breaking his maiden. I think he ran deceptively well in that synthetic race 2-back, closing wide in a race that has proven to be better than it looks on paper. And then last time, the Leonada Stakes, another race that was deceptively strong with the top two finishers, Baby Max and Chunk of Gold, coming out of that race to earn 90 plus buyers in their subsequent starts. And Hard as Life, my main takeaway with him is that he is a gun runner who has never been on the dirt. And Gun Runner, you can slice the stats any way you want. He is a dirt sire. His progeny prefer the dirt, and connections run their Gun Runners on the turf and synthetic. They generally prefer the dirt. And I think this horse is going to improve on this surface. And I just find it really interesting that these connections have targeted this race when there are first level allowances out there, other races he's eligible for. They're swinging for the fences with this horse. He must be doing well, and he's definitely going to be a pretty big price.
Yeah, you have a plan for this race. You have a plan for the sequence, you have an approach, and that's what we have to do when you're playing a pick 5 ticket. You can't just go into it thinking about horses you like and putting them together. Have a plan. How do you want to attack it? David doesn't like the shorter prices much in that race, and he's looking for some of the bigger ones. And I couldn't completely understand what you're talking about with the not being sold necessarily on the horses that are going to be the shortish prices. The problem that I had in particular, I didn't necessarily love some of the others, some of the other options. And you were making great cases for some of them. The one that I don't have on the ticket that I will probably find a way to use somewhere that you talked about, David, was the 2 Bracket Buster, who was kind of one of those horses on the fringes for me. And seeing him show up in the mix for you, I definitely will want to include. But the reason why I put Gosker on the top spot, I just preferred him more than Prater, and it seems like you did of the 2 that were going to be shorter prices as well. I like that he showed the ability in the debut to come from off the pace a little more, and I feel like if one of the shorter prices is going to be sitting, it's going to be the 6. I just think that's probably the better trip. He can sit off the pace a little bit. I think he'll step forward in here with just one less race. I think there's just a little bit more room for upside for him. And he's a half to a horse named Harvey's Little Goyle, who was a 1.125 mile stakes winner on the turf and on the dirt. So distance should be no problem for him, David. And then Hypnus, I definitely want to use because there are versions of this race where Hypnus gets the trip. And I think if they go quick enough, he's the most talented of the horses that are likely to come closing. It's just sometimes not a trip that you get at Keeneland with his running style. I just love to see him get a little more involved because he gets himself into some trouble. And maybe that's what they're putting the blinkers on, hoping for, that instead of just being 10th in the field, he can start his rally from 6th, right? Or and not have to necessarily be dead last. So he's a horse who I want to see in the mix too. I'm just kind of curious of the pace scenario. I don't know if they're going to be going right at each other. It really comes down to what Gosker and Prater will do. And that's why I'm continuing to warm up more and more to a horse like Bracket Buster, who could sit a pretty good trip down on the inside. So I think Gosker is the one that I'll probably try to key in on in this race, and we'll have a ticket or two where I'm single to Gosker. I will probably have another one where I'm using the logicals in here, 6, 7, and 8, and then key in some of the other races. But don't forget about the couple scratches in here. And what did you think as far as the pace, David, before we move on to race 10?
Yeah, it's a little bit murky. And I guess if you're a fan of some of the short prices like Preeter and Gosker, the positive with them is they've got that tactical speed where they can get position. And I do think Bracket Buster is a horse that will be forward. Like I said, he's really sharp away from the gate. So I think they're going to have the opportunity to go forward with him. And at a price, I'd much rather have him being forward than the other two that I just was a little bit iffy on. But it definitely does seem like a race where those two scratches do, or those two expected scratches, I should say, do affect the pace scenario, especially with Rolando coming out, because there's no need to lead type in here.
Yeah, Bracket Buster did have legit trouble. Go back and watch that replay if you didn't see it last time out. He got shuffled back. He got like his path got closed a couple different times too. And the race, as David pointed out, very, very live. Sovereignty, Tistastic, Sandman. Even the, I think, 6th place finisher is a stakes place horse named Forge Steel. So really strong race that Bracket Buster exits. Let's turn the page to the grade 1 Jenny Wiley, 1.16 miles on the turf course, fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. I thought a very challenging race in here, David, because you have a couple interesting, talented shippers like Excellent Truth. I'm going to go with Schwazia. I think that's what we were saying with the
I
2.
believe that's correct.
Okay. I'm going to pat myself on the back there. So that's what I had down. And even the 6 Jabara, very, very live horses. Any one of them could win. They would not shock me at all. And then you have horses like Caho Beach and Be Your Best, who probably have an advantage on others with their tactical speed and their speed, the ability to get to the front and sit close. Other up-and-coming horses here, like to the outside, no-show Sammy Joe has done almost nothing wrong, but gets an acid test in here. Vina Arana was super impressive, but faces way, way tougher. I thought this was a fun race to handicap.
It's a really fun race to handicap. It's coming up, I think, more interesting than sometimes the Jenny Wiley does because we're so used to Chad Brown dominating this race in recent years. And he's got one in here and definitely a contender in the rail horse, Excellent Truth. But as you said, you've got the shippers coming in, horses coming back off layoffs that have shown talent. There's a case to be made for just about every horse in this field. I mean, I might say the number 4, Vina Arana, is a little tough to make, but I know she's a horse that you've liked a little bit in the past, Gino. Probably not this spot, but she's a talented one. And it's a tough race to have in this sequence, but a race that I'm definitely looking forward to betting just on its own outside of the pick 5.
Who are some of the horses that you had on kind of that top tier?
So again, in this sequence, you've got to make some tough decisions. And when I go through this exercise of setting my key, use, and defend horses, and I think a lot of horses can win, the horses that I want to put in the key category are those that I think are going to offer the best value commensurate to what I think their actual chances of winning are. So for me, those 2 horses are the number 3 Poolside with Slim and the number 9 No Show Sammy Joe, who are both going to be probably double digits odds in this race. I'm more sure of that with the number 3 Poolside with Slim. Just a horse who was steadily improving during her 3-year-old season, not at the very top of that 3-year-old filly division, but I thought she ran some nice races, particularly when she won over this Keeneland course in the Valley View 3-back. And then, I just haven't really loved the trips that she's gotten in the
Yeah.
2 starts since then. She was drawn very wide in the Mrs. Revere 2-back. I don't think she really ran any worse than Kehoe Beach, the winner of that race, who is back in here. She was wide into the clubhouse turn, rank, did get over to the inside eventually, but was trying to come through along the inside, which is probably not her preferred place to be. So I think that was a better performance than it seems. And the difference between Poolside with Slim and Kehoe Beach coming into this race is Poolside with Slim got that prep last time at
Yeah.
Gulfstream. And again, I didn't love the trip. She kind of hit the gate coming out of the starting stalls, was a little further back than you would have expected her to be based on the way the pace of that race looked. But again, she finished decently behind some nice runners. I think she's going to have a forward move in her. And I like horses that can save ground over this Keeneland turf course. She should have the opportunity to do so. And I like this rider change to Jose Ortiz, who's just been doing very well as of late wherever he goes. And I think that he's going to work out a better trip for this filly. So at a big price, she's in the key category for me. And the other key horse that I want to make a push for is the number 9, No Show Sammy Joe, just a horse that has done nothing wrong in recent years on the turf. She arguably should have won 5 in a row because she was unlucky to lose last time in the Long Island to today's rival Be Your Best. I definitely want No Show Sammy Joe of the 2 coming out of that Long Island because she was wide around the turns, had too much to do at the top of the stretch, and still was almost able to get there at the end. I don't think she's a filly that necessarily needs that kind of marathon distance to be successful, and she's been training exceptionally well when you watch some of her workout videos coming back for this race. Graham Motion is one of those trainers where you just don't have to worry about layoffs at all. He has great layoff stats, and she feels like one that hasn't necessarily proved that she's of this quality yet. So she still is coming in here with upside, and I think you might see that reflected in her price. So those are the 2 that I really want to make a push for. But Gino, I do respect the number 1, Excellent Truth, and I think you've got her in the used category as well. She probably is the most likely winner. I just don't really see the value with her.
Yeah, we have a lot of similar horses, just we kind of stack them up a little differently. I think the 2 keys for me are 2 horses that you have in your defend category.
Mhm.
Schwazia, who has 2 really nice races in
Yeah.
2025 so far, and she beat Cinderella's Dream. We know Cinderella's Dream as a multiple graded stakes winner who was second in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. So I think that's a really good running line for Schwazia coming to the U.S. and using that as kind of a measuring stick to see where she stacks up. The 8 Sacred Wish, I've just been so impressed with how she just keeps developing, keeps getting a little bit better. She's now a 5-year-old mare, so she'll be making her second start as a 5-year-old. Really kind of feels like her first start of the year, though, because she had the campaign that ended with the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf. They've given her a couple months off, and now she'll start. And if you just key off her turf form, she has 11 turf races. She has 9 of them in the money, and the other 2 she finished 4th. She's shown a little more versatility too. She's not going to be on the lead or anything, but if they want to place her like a little closer, she can sit close. She can come from off the pace if they're going a little too fast early on. And yeah, I would love to see her, as now as a 5-year-old. Sometimes we don't see these horses get the opportunity to race into their 5-year-old season, in particular the mares, and they can get really good with a little more maturity too at 5. So those will be 2 that are in the key category for me. In the use, the 1 Excellent Truth, who you were pointing out. I mean, you look at some of the horses that she had faced in some of that company. I think Marquis de Sauvigny was one who had won 4 in a row last year, 3 Group 1s. The concern that I have is just, the little bit of the layoff, drawing down on the inside, the first start in the U.S., kind of dealing with the different complexion. A lot of little things you can point to for a horse who's going to be a pretty short price because of those connections. So I will use, along with the 5 Be Your Best, who could probably sit a really nice trip just off Kehoe Beach. But I kind of feel like you were pointing out with Poolside with Slim and Kehoe Beach. I actually thought Sacred Wish, probably the better of the 2 horses coming out of the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf, just based on the trips they got. Sacred Wish's trip was much tougher, where Be Your Best got a much softer trip. And the way the turf course was playing that day, it was playing very kind to horses who were sitting really close. And then in the defend spot, we use the 6 and the 7. There are versions of this race where Kehoe Beach can maybe just get the lead and cruise. So if that happens, and I'm right in some of the other races, David, I just want to make sure that I have something still alive somewhere. And then with Jabara, who I don't like as much as the other imports, but there are still some races last year And the form behind Porta Fortuna is pretty good. That was a very, very nice horse last year. So I give Jabara a shot, and we'll use in some way, shape, or form too defensively. So couple in each category for me. Anything else you want to point out about this race, David, before we turn the page?
Yeah, I think we viewed it similarly in terms of structure. I also threw a bunch of horses into my defend category because if I am right about one of my two crazy opinions in the
Yeah.
Lexington, I want to have coverage to defend horses in this race. So I gotten through with all keys so far because I can see any of Schwazia or even the other European shipper, Jabara, Kehoe Beach, Sacred Wish, who you like. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I can see them all winning. You just have to make some tough decisions in the sequence.
Yep. And it'll come down to race number 11 at Keeneland, the final leg of the Pick 5 on Saturday. And I think this is one where a lot of folks may single, may shorten up with a horse like Sherbini, because on paper, Sherbini does look really, really good, David. I mean, this is a grade one place filly. She won her career debut, and following that, she was in stakes company 4 consecutive times, and all of the horses that she's faced have come back and run really well, from the Queen's MG to Long Neck Paula to Immersive, who I believe is back now in training and going to get her season started pretty soon. Even Quiet Side, who was behind in some of those races, has come back and been really, really good so far this year. And then Good Cheer. So this is just a lot softer company than what she faced. She was in that restricted maiden race in her debut. So this is like a lot of class relief compared to what she's been facing as of late.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be pretty brief with this one, Gino. I'm not trying to beat Sherbini, and we can go to my grid for this race. I've got her in the key slot, and I'm gonna lean pretty hard on her. I'm not gonna put any horses in the use category. I've got a couple of defends if it does come to that, and I managed to be right with all my key horses up until this point, which seems like an unlikely scenario based on the way that I've structured my opinions here. But Sherbini, this is just a field that she is supposed to be better than, as you laid it out. She has faced way better competition in all of her starts up until this point. I get it. She's coming off a layoff. You maybe want to not trust a horse that's turning back in distance, but she's eligible for this race just because she competed in one of those auction restricted races on debut. Unlike others in this field, she's never had to run for the claiming tag to get eligible for this starter allowance race. So it's just due to the fact that those auction races exist that she's even able to run against a field that's this weak. So she's going to be a handful for this group, and I'm not going to try to overcomplicate this one.
Yeah, I'm going to keep keying on her and one other horse, David. And I think that the price what that I will use, because I feel like if she gets beat, it might be from a horse coming from off the pace a little bit. Maybe Irad gets too aggressive with her, and she's kind of caught up a little bit wide. I like the race that Mel ran 2 starts back at Gulfstream Park. I thought that was pretty solid, and then jumped into a stakes race last time out. If you eliminate the first 2 races on a sloppy track, then you have a race on the synthetic going long, then a turf race. There's really only been 2 races on fast dirt for this horse. So I think, like a small sample size, and maybe there's some upside for a horse who can sit off the pace a little bit. But so that would be the price horse, my kind of creative horse in this race. But I do think Sherbini is hands down the one they'll all have to beat in here. So in the key spot, I don't want to go too big. I don't want to use a bunch of other horses, because I do feel like Sherbini isn't one that is worth trying to completely toss out. And David, the way you kind of set your ticket up, that if you get to the last race, you don't really need a price there, because you would have already gotten one of your prices along the way. In the Lexington, you're not using those shorter prices. So if you get through that race, you already got the value you needed in a race. I'm still maybe looking for a little value in some spots, because I'll probably have a ticket where I lean in on Gosker. So in that sense, I would want a couple others who might be able to provide a little more value. Horses like the 6, Madeline's Promise. It's a really nice spot. There's not that much early speed in here. So I do expect Madeline's Promise to be close. Also, some of the reasons why I used Zeruda, who was able to sit really close last time out. Flavian Pratt is one of the absolute best at kind of sniffing out this scenario when there's not that much early speed, and just putting a horse in a really good spot and having them sit close. And then the 2, Autumn Rhythm, another one who can be inside, not far out of it. And if, Sherbini's involved early, or if Sherbini doesn't fire, I could absolutely see this horse being close and getting a slice. So no doubt the horse they'll all have to beat in that last race, and one that'll probably be the most popular single, I'd say, in the sequence would be
Oh, yeah.
Sherbini. 8-11 for me in that top spot, 6-10, and then I'll defend with Autumn Rhythm. So, David, let's take a look at the full grid for you, and give everybody one more run through how you're going to set this pick 5 up.
Yeah, as you were kind of suggesting there, Gino, I'm going to try to get some opinions home in races 7, 9, and 10 that could give me some prices. And I'm not going to get too creative in races 8 and 11, where I think things look a little bit more logical. So I'm hoping to be right in that first leg, because getting a key horse home in that first leg of the sequence will at least set me up to maybe have some coverage in some other races where I'm taking shots, like with those two long shots that I like in the Lexington, or the same thing in the Jenny Wiley, where the two horses that I've got in the key category are 15-1 and 20-1 on the morning line. So hopefully I can get some coverage to those races. But I also really like those horses. And if I can be right and get to the last leg, I would be happy just to get alive to Sherbini. I think she is a very likely winner, even if the value isn't necessarily there. I'm not somebody that thinks you have to necessarily find some clever value-based opinion in every single leg, because you're unlikely to be right in 5 consecutive races with those types of opinions. So I'll be just okay getting alive to Sherbini. But I did throw a couple of defend horses in that race, one of which is a price, just in case I'm right up until that point. But it definitely is a sequence where I had to downgrade some horses along the way that I do like better than where I put them in the column might suggest. It just is a sequence that it's really easy for your ticket to get bloated, and you have to base how you're going to play it on what your budget is.
Yeah, and as we pull up my grid, I think you probably do the same, David. I like to handicap races early, so mostly always I'm handicapping them without the morning line odds too. And these races were just challenging, trying to make my value line, or the line that I
Mhm.
would suggest for some of these horses, and I was off, way off with some of them, and who knows where they'll settle in. But I will look for a price, at least one in the 7th race. I think the 11 will offer us pretty nice value in there. 10 could give you a little value as well. The 12 and the 1 were kind of the logical horses that I think will take a good amount of money. The 6 is another fun horse that has some upside, comes out of some strong races, second start back. Could really expect the 6 to take a nice step forward off of that one. Race number 8, 7, 9, 11 for me. The 11 is the import, who's likely going to take a good amount of money in there, top tier contender. Race number 9, we move into the stakes races. That's the Lexington. Yeah, I'd made a strong opinion there with Gosker. The one that I don't have on the key that I will probably use somewhere is the 2, who David and I were talking a little more about. David had Bracket Buster in the mix on a key horse, and I will definitely be having at least as a defend, some way, shape, or form. The Jenny Wiley, really good grade 1. We'll have the 2 and the 8 as kind of fun price horses. Schwazia and Sacred Wish, they won't be crazy prices, but maybe in the 4 to like 6, 8-1 range for those two. And then 1 and 5, Excellent Truth, probably the one they'll all have to beat in there. 6 and 7 will be defends for me, because I could see a version of this race where Cajo Beach gets away. I think Jabara might be able to get back to some of those races last year when pretty competitive with Porta Fortuna. And then closing things out with Sherbini, and then a price horse in the key section, and then some others to include if Sherbini gets beat, and maybe some of the other keys along the way get the job done. So you saw how David's going to play it. You saw how I'm looking to play it. But the important part now is you, however you want to put your pick fives together. We'd always love to hear from you. So feel free to comment in the section below. Let us know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did we miss some of the horses, and how you might be playing this pick 5? David, I always have a fun time doing these videos with you, because there's always a couple horses that weren't on my radar quite as much that you lead me to, that I end up going back and taking a second look at. And I've done a couple with Ashley, with Mike too. So really enjoyed doing these videos and kind of seeing how other sharp handicappers think about the strategy, the wagering, because we've done a lot of the horse by horse previews. We know how the handicapping will go. A lot of times the strategy and just seeing who you decide to have as a defend versus a key horse. I always appreciate that knowledge.
Yeah, these are difficult races, and you're not always going to see everything that's relevant by yourselves. And talking through the races with somebody else whose opinion that you respect, it enlightens you to maybe look at the races in a different way than you might have come upon. So that's only going to strengthen your opinions when you go to place those wagers.
Good luck to everyone playing the races this weekend at Keeneland.